and welcome to another discussion of Destiny's Conflict. This is the third discussion for this book, which is the 10th book in the Wars of Light and Shadow series by Janny Wurts. We are one more discussion away from getting to the last book in the series. We meet every 2 weeks and we discuss 3 to 4 chapters in the book, depending on the right breakdown that gets us to the book in a reasonable amount of time. Today's discussion is going to be chapters 8 through 10, starting with Fifth Upset, and many things happen. So many things happen in these 3 chapters. And like Chibi Bo says, the biggest mystery since Cuss. We got some answers there. With me, of course, I have the usual friends we chat about these books with. Jared, could you introduce yourself and we'll move on?
Yep. I am Jared. I am the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and also Speculation podcast and other fine podcasts on page chewing.
Very nice. And Chibi Bo.
I am Chibi-Po, and I'm protesting this reverse alphabet nonsense. C comes before J. Also, if you're following along and you haven't read this book yet, please go away now because there's major spoilers coming.
Yes.
Yeah. But see, Chibi-Po, Varsha comes after Jared. So V, J, and C. We were just doing reverse alphabetical all of the time. We didn't flip it halfway through. Anyway, cool. So we start with Arathorn. I think where we left off was Arathorn in the clutches of Celody / Moriel, and that distinction becomes more important in this chapter. And yes, and then he ends up in the crystal and he shatters the crystal and things happen.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
There were a couple things, and I think some of this may be to the end of the chapter where he got captured, that I caught was interesting, and I can't remember, reminding myself to ask Janny about this, but we know that, the Coriani can kill if she by splitting hairs on what's considered killing, but how those soldiers that were Erethan was hiding from, we see in one of the news items, I think, from the previous chapter, that they just all dropped dead. And so I was like, wait, how did, I would assume the implication was Coriani killed them, probably Celody, but I was like, wait, how did they do that? Because, she specifically made a point about how the Coriani Creed forbids murder, and she had to work around with using Branzian to, shoot the arrow at, Erethan back in Warhost.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting, because she pretty wantonly kills her sisters off for various purposes. I mean, I guess by using them, that has to count as murder. Unless, like you said, we're splitting hairs about what constitutes murder.
It's kind of splitting hairs. It's like you've devoted them to you've got them doing a purpose. If they die during that purpose, well, they were fulfilling their purpose. They weren't, she wasn't intentionally, quotation marks, killing them.
Yeah, the true sect priest was, of course, blaming the slaughter on the Master of Shadow.
Yeah.
But that's not why. Of course, we know it wasn't Arathorn. And they died without any sign of trauma.
Yeah, which is why I was like, wow, because she obviously didn't want the true sect to get wind of, where Arathorn was or continue to track him, since she had him in custody and she didn't want to have to deal with them. So I was like, huh. That was the thing I was wondering about. But yes, she's like, all right, I'm going to, try to, get in your brain inside you using the Waystone, and Erethan's like, I'm gonna dive in, and then she's like, I've won, and then Erethan's like, want to bet?
Things are not going well for her, and she's like, let him just take his time inside the crystal. We'll just harvest his knowledge. Once it is done, we'll take our time with it. Just let him die slowly, and it doesn't matter. And things will go our way. This is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I'll admit, like, it's consistent from all the way back. That's real. She's convinced that she's on top of things. She's got everything under control, and then people who have, hit her in ways that she doesn't even see coming. She's like, "Oh, wait, we've won! His spirit will be trapped in here, and I can just, he dies, and all his knowledge and everything is mine." And then Erethan's like, "No."
Yeah, but there was
plus we saw the Waystone.
There was a reason for that, because because of the visions that he had while in the Waystone.
Yeah, the imprints or spirits of the previous matriarchs and failed aspirants all were like, "Hey, we're not on board with this," which I guess is a good sign of how twisted the Coriani, purpose has become.
Yeah, because even Sethvir and Ascender were worried about what was going to happen. They were like, they were kind of fidgeting as they were watching this kind of helplessly.
Yeah, like it was very real peril, because the knowledge Erethan's had would have made her be able to do stuff that made what she did back in Grand Conspiracy probably look like child's play, because she wouldn't have had to use proxies or anything. She would know how to directly access and mess with the entire planetary forces in a way that she just couldn't do before.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like that little piece of philosophy that Arathon threw at her. Knowledge has limits, imagination does not. And I thought that was pretty key to his discovering things about the Waystone when he was there. He kind of saw other worlds, futures, and stuff like that. He did those descriptions of, like basically skyscrapers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
previous worlds and
and he finds out through those visions in the Waystone the truth about Alara, and he witnessed the horror of Moriel's necromancy, and finds out the truth about that, and he kind of talks to the Waystone and has the Waystone become his ally now. So that was pretty cool stuff there.
Yeah. So Moriel did get killed on her quest to subdue Arathon because he would subdue her otherwise. If she had just left him alone for 500 years, she'd probably be okay. Instead, she spent all her time trying to trap the guy, and the trapping is what killed her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like her obsession with this, from all the way back is like, well, this is, you kept coming at him, and Erethan's like, yeah, I'm going to mess with you back. And then, but yes, can we just appreciate, that she just has no understanding of what she's dealing with? Because she's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to use a crystal that works with, I've already seen, can be messed with, he can mess with crystals, through sound, like he did with Lorinda. And I'm going to, let him, a dude who can mess with crystals through sound, spirit get, tangled up inside this thing. And I'm so sure of victory. It's like, yeah, you're not bright.
Yeah, it's a classic case of the villain bringing about their own downfall through blind ambition, basically.
Yep.
And so now we have a new prime matriarch. Well,
Yeah. Well,
she's a
the breaking
prime
point.
matriarch, but
Yeah, the breaking point. You had the magical fight between Arathon and Moriel, and which was really cool description. That that magical battle between the two was awesome. I really liked how that was written. And then Moriel dies, the Waystone is shattered, and the Coriani order is gutted. Like all these top level Coriani die because of that shattering of the Waystone. So that was pretty significant, and it freed Lorenda, of course, at the same time. Um, and I think we were talking yesterday, Vasher, about how we were kind of hoping Lorenda was going to um, kind of not just immediately want to almost fill in, do the same thing that Moriel did, and fill in and you know right away want to get revenge on Arathon, and but she kind of does. I mean, I imagine she's a pretty twisted person by now after a couple hundred years of captivity in the way she was. But I was kind of hoping that she would, um, I don't know, at least take a breath and and get some bearings. I know there was some talk about rebuilding the order and stuff like that, but and I think one of the other Coriani witches there also expressed a need to kill Arathon as well. Um,
Yeah.
so they seem to be pretty single minded on that account.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I think I celebrated for like 2 minutes after Muriel died, and then Lorenda came and sort of became this person. I don't know how devious she is with her planning. Like she has shown that she can be as twisted as Muriel, right? Like Fiona Arith was her idea,
Yeah.
but what was I saying? The other enchantress, her hatred for Arathon and wanting to kill him, I kind of get to a certain extent because she's just seen all this damage done and she wants retribution. Okay. But Lorenda, I was hoping, I mean, I expected that she would eventually come back to Arathon, but I didn't think that would be her opening thought, um the she's got all the other stuff going on with the rebuilding, and she's finally free. And I think the fact that she could be treated that way, she has no, say, introspection about the nature of the order. She wants to keep it up the way it was, and she's annoyed that the she lost some power or some knowledge that the order was keeping, whereas whatever it was twisted Moriel to the extent that it did, and she's not really thinking about whatever it is, whether it was worth that. And maybe she'll get there. Maybe we just have to wait for it. I don't know. But yeah, just right now, it kind of bothered me a little bit that her first thought was Arathon. Let's kill Arathon.
yeah, I felt it was something like, after 300 years, I'm free. It's time to kill Arathon.
Yeah, yeah,
that kind of felt like she doesn't even stop. She's just like, I'm free. Let's celebrate. I can do whatever I want. You know,
yeah.
and then
I
she's
can
like,
move my own limbs again.
yeah.
Anyway,
Right. Yeah.
And then she's like, oh well, no, this is all Arathon's fault. He must be, you know, got to get him. Um, but he also, as we saw, made off with some things, and I think she
Yeah.
even takes point. argue or to bemoan the fact that the box where Alara's crystal was in was like heavily warded, and Erethan just like didn't even care.
Yep, he took it. Yeah.
So was that her original crystal, or was it one of the copies they had made?
It was the original.
Okay, interesting. I have a
Yeah.
question about something that happens later. Then can I
Yeah.
just ask it now since we're talking about it? The so you know how Keol, right, killed a bunch of Koreani people by immersing their crystal in salt. So how
Mhm.
come Ilera's in salt water? I mean, how come Ilera is alive now?
He did it well. One would be the um, that the seven gave her a different thing, but the main reason is, if remember, he did a specific ritual before that, where he heated it up and then dropped it in cold salt water.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, Lorinda remarks in her thoughts something about elemental fire, and so by heating it up and then dropped it in, and
Okay, so he protected it so it wouldn't kill her if it did get immersed in.
I think if it was just immersed in salt water without that extra step, it just clears whatever
Oh, so Keol
information.
did the thing where he
Right.
heated it up and okay, got it. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, and but we do see Alara in these chapters too. She's having nice chats with Davian.
Yes.
Was that in this
About
one? Oh.
It's in an 8. It's in an 8 or 9.
I think it's
No,
the
I think it's 9.
beginning
Yeah.
of 9, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In the meantime, what was it? What we have here? We had I had a question about let's see, we had Caramon talking to Sethvia about they were talking about the compact and how it reduced mankind's free will in practice to the role of playthings and puppetry. And I found that interesting. And who was it? Caramon said, I like breeding monsters. In pestilence, he finds it less twisted than two-legged sheep. I found like Caramon's kind of dismissal of humans and having as beyond sheep and having free will was kind of a little telling of the fellowship here in his attitude.
Yeah. I think the free will bit is probably that he thinks that that's what the outcome of the compact is, that humans have severely reduced free will because of it. Did I read that right?
I think that's Davian's argument that it
Okay.
would reduce the free will, and that's why he is always in disagreement with the
Got it.
sorcerers.
Mm.
And so, and Caramon, Caramon, he's just a cranky old bastard, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of, who was it who got trapped with? Oh, okay, it was Karadmon who had gotten trapped with Davian when that storm happened, or when Muriel did her attack. Luhain is with the dragon right now,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And there was something at the end of this chapter where Ascendere says to Sethvia to dispatch Caradmon to Rockfell. It says, an incarnate sorcerer must stand in partnership with the Discorporate's presence before Dakar's miscalled strategy thrashed across latitude and destabilized the Grand Wards that incinerated Deshier. I wasn't sure what all that meant, to be honest with you.
I think Dakar's planning something. I forget what, but whatever it is he's planning will raise the flux lines. Like there is something that he thinks will work, but he doesn't know enough about the consequences of it, and the consequences will be dire. And I think it's going to um, sort of uh, affect the flux lines that pass through the place where Deshtir is stored. Kind of like that previous time when uh, there was that, I think one of the equinoxes when they took Arathon's help to calm the thing down. I think this would have done something or will do something similar. We haven't seen it yet. But I forget the details of what it was that Dakar wanted to do.
Yeah, what is Dakar planning?
I think it was in the section just before that news item. Chibipo, do you remember? Yes.
Is this a? This is I don't think that bit's in 8, 9, or 10.
No, it is. I mean, not the actual happening of it, but the discussion that Dakar is going to do some unwitting damage.
I mean, yeah, well, not in the news items because I was trying to find it, and I was checking all three of those, and I was like, where's
Oh,
this
maybe
bit?
it wasn't a news item, but
Yeah.
there was. What was the page number?
Well, that section I just read was the very last paragraph in
Oh,
the
right.
in the chapter before the news items. But I'm not sure what Dakar is planning that would get these guys all wound up.
Uh,
Yeah, I think it's in that section right there. What Dakar has wrecked our sage plan to reduce the worst of the Halvet Wood clan's losses. He chose not to wait. Echoes. It starts with Dakar's impetuous idiocy did what?
Oh, it has something to do with the copper grounding rods sent from the high priesthood to
Oh, that's right.
Bane.
Yes. He yeah. Dakar's erratic sight failed to forecast the greater disaster beyond the handful of casualties, a shortfall not helped by Esfan's inexperience.
He has a crack brain scheme to draw down the lightning at Kath
Mm,
El Kane. So
right.
okay, there we go. Yeah, so he's gonna, um, uh, like charge the lane, but he's overlooked that it's gonna, energy will bleed off, which will, you know, reach out to, uh, the
yeah,
burst will
I'm just
like
wondering. I just wonder
drive
if we
the life
know.
diviners insane and make them all hallucinate. But
Oh, he's looking to mess with the light priest. And
yeah,
okay,
but
okay,
he's overlooked, short-sightedly overlooked what else will happen. So Caradmon and someone else have to be there at Rockfell to stabilize it because you need two paired, uh, one discorporate and one not to stabilize those things.
right, okay. Uh, well, the best thing about that whole chapter, of course, was Moriel died. Uh, that's what we've all been waiting for a very long time.
Yes.
So
And how she
as- I was like,
exploded
I
or
was like, yeah, I cheered. I really did.
yes. All right. Next chapter with
All right.
Ilera trying to get into Davian's lair.
Yes, she's trying to get into Kiwa,
Mm-hmm.
and Arathon stows away and causes some trouble on a boat,
Yes.
and um, we got Dace taken care of, Lysair again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she gets into Kiwa, and there was a little knife stuff going on.
Yes, by using the knife.
Yeah, some knife stuff.
So only two bloodlines can use it, and other people can use it on their behalf, it seems like, because Salphinavan used it, and now on Lysa's behalf, and Ilera used it on Arathon's behalf. But those two are the same bloodline. I guess the crone, not the crone, anything, and anything to her. Is that how you say her name? She was the other bloodline, right? That had access to use the knife.
Yeah, yeah. Teshua, yeah, yeah. And Hasadi's heritage, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was interesting. That was some interesting knife history stuff, and she was able to use it to get into there. And of course, Dakar being the pleasant host he is, welcomes her in his unique way, and there was a lot of stuff in there there was a lot of like exposition in here about some of the histories and some of the because he was allowing her to use the library in the way he does, and so that was all interesting stuff. It was stuff about lineages and stuff about you know um the asking the right questions to look up stuff, and um there was so it was pretty pretty cool stuff. It's interesting that we can get so much history still after 10 books of of
Yeah.
of a series, we're still getting like this huge history and sense of time and stuff, and all this information about um this knife and ways to try to defeat the mysteries incursion, and all this just different perspective of who who's related to who, and how these artifacts and these places were created and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, yeah. The knife is 19,000 years old. I think we already sort of knew that, did we? But
Yeah, we
I was,
did, yeah, but she
yeah.
confirmed a lot of stuff there
Mm-hmm.
with the lineages and stuff like that.
Yeah. And we got some more about Arathon's own abilities, and I suppose by extension, Lysair's too. Uh, and
Yeah,
Dari Sahelas, she was the one, she was the originator of the current line, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, the uh, Maitland's Divino. I'm not sure if I said Divinville, whatever. Uh, Denville, was crossbred with someone, one of the Sahelis heirs back in Child of Prophecy, and
Oh,
then
right. Yep.
bore Darius Sahelis, Sahelis, who eventually went through the world's end, and her ancestors founded Raven, um, and then crossbred with Lysair's dad and you know Erethan's dad, resulting in Erethan and Lysair.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of you know some new information, but some reaffirming information, I would say, this this section. And then we get Arathon finds the Taliarth, the boat he built at in Marior way back when. So that was pretty cool to see that boat again. And then we had a whole bunch of sailing stuff where you could definitely tell that Janny was giving us her knowledge of sailing in this section. I almost felt like I was reading Moby Dick again in some areas with all the sailing terminology she was using. Um,
Right.
and but he was by himself, and he had a hard time. Um, it wasn't easy doing it all by himself, and that was a lot of information there about that. Um, and then he kind of crashes into he finds it, right. He finds the Paravian stronghold, I guess, and
Yeah. The severely warded Bravian stronghold, which he gets there accidentally because of some lightning discharge during a storm, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, shipwreck. And um it was
And
interesting because it's like how many years did he spend in what was it, ships or war?
several
What was
decades. I think
Somewhat,
it was
yeah,
Fugitive Prince. I
oh
think.
yeah. For like Fugitive Prince, The Great
Fugitive Prince, yeah.
Conspiracy, he spent a good uh,
Multiple
20
decades, I
years,
think.
yeah, more
Yeah.
than a decade at least.
Yeah.
Trying to find him.
Right. Yeah.
So
And then
two
yeah.
two things that have been set up from very early on sort of come to fruition or get some payoff, so to speak. One was that news item from Curse of the Mistwraith with uh, someone. I think it wasn't clear from that moment that it was a fellowship sorcerer, or maybe it was, but there's a unicorn protecting a fellowship sorcerer, and um, in some far off continent, which we now see Kiladis being released here. And there was a vision that Dakar had when they stopped at some point in Fugitive Prince in their search for the Paravians, where he sees a unicorn charging at him at Arathon, and there was possibility that he might die of that contact. But little did he know, Arathon pulled out the Alethiel and saved himself. That was pretty cool. I was eager to see both of those things.
Yeah. That was a long time in coming. And yeah, it was pretty cool. I love all the descriptions in that section. It's called presence, so it's a presence of the Paravian unicorn. And I love all the descriptions in there. I love the meeting the unicorn and pulling out the sword and all that stuff. That was just pretty awesome stuff. And then he kind of woke up and he's like reading Salatis's work, his words, his pictures and stuff. So that was pretty cool too, finding out it was Salatis's stuff.
Yeah. And I think this might have been chapter 10, right? Or maybe they were both chapter 9, I don't remember. But
Yeah, it
we
goes into
had
10. Yeah.
it was both Ilera and Arathon both had a section where they sat down and just read a lot, and I enjoyed reading that.
I know. It's like, oh wow, I'm reading about somebody reading. Cool.
Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, you've been, looking for the Paravians, and possibly finding, this missing sorcerer, and you find all his journals and whatnot. No sign of him, and you're
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna read.
Yeah. No, it was interesting. It was cool how it all came about, and it was like it was just perfectly like somebody being on like an archaeology quest almost, and finding ancient scrolls, or finding ancient manuscripts that meant something to the history of your world that you're dealing with here, and the writings of somebody who's been that was lost, and it just the uncovering of that history. It was just cool. It was just really cool as hell.
Yes, I agree. And I guess we got a little bit of soon after the Mistwraith's invasion history too, with how the world looked, um, the transformation of the world as the plants started to die and fungi started to grow in the lack of light. I think that was all really interesting too.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and then at the end of that section, he tells Salatus finally shows himself, and he says that Dakar's Westgate prophecy has achieved closure. and he says, "Your Grace, I am indebted to you for deliverance from the pitfall of my own enchantment." So I'm imagining that Arathon's presence here has somehow allowed Salatus to be free to do stuff. Is that
I can answer that. Um, so that ties back to the Curse of the Mistwraith bit. Um, the entire setup for the cavern that he was, resting in, where he'd, uh, and whatnot, um, where he'd done his thing to uplift the frequency for the archipelago that they were on. Um, uh, it was set up so that when the sunlight hit it directly, it would have woken him up. But he didn't account for the fact that during the time that he was asleep, a tree grew and its shadow blocked the sunlight
from the curse, right?
blocked the sunlight in such a way that the enough sunlight didn't come through to um, hit the shadows, there to, release him from slumber.
Okay, all right.
So he just continued to sleep, for another 250-ish, almost 300 years, just by random chance, because the tree happened to grow.
Oh, okay, that's why he's asking. These trees are over 500 years old. How long has the Mistwraith been vanquished? And yeah, okay, and then
And
Arathon.
Earth deliberately used his shadow and stuff to just break it. So
Yeah, all right, cool, very cool. All right, we get more. Yeah.
And then Kiladis intervenes or tries to on Arathon's behalf with the Paravians. But then they're like, nope, we got you. We're letting him go go now. So why does Kiladis need to stay on that continent again? Does he need to be there to maintain that higher frequency thing?
plus, to disable, bring down I think because some of that was his construction. So the stuff that's keeping them hidden is you know uh, needs to make sure that the upshifted frequency is maintained so that they don't suffer any problems um, while they bring down those wards. But also there was that interesting bit where we found out uh, a little bit more about the choosing of the High Kings and which sorcerer picked who, and we found out which one Calatus, nominated.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I really like that. I hope we get to see a lot more Kiladis. It seems unlikely in the next 3 chapters of this book, but in a Song of the Mysteries.
It's interesting what the was that a centaur Tehavel, or is that a
Tavel, yes.
yeah? He was talking to Salatus, and he was saying the binding constraint on Arathon's destiny springs instead from your fellowship colleagues, and like he was saying, the Paravians aren't directing this binding. And Salatus was like, that I should live to endure such a wrong. So he seems to be kind of in disagreement with what the rest of the fellowship has done so far.
Yeah, the blood oath, which we kind of knew that back in Warhost, the blood oath, is
That's referring to the blood oath that
it might also be referring to the that they've. I think it's the blood oath specifically, but it could also be referring to that they've basically tossed Erethan's life off to the Coriani until that whole situation is resolved. So
yeah,
with the non-interference.
All right. And there's a problem now with Arathon returning to the continent because the hidden knowledge of the Peruvian refuge would accompany him.
Yeah,
seems
that's
like
the other thing. For him to leave, like, the stuff has to come down.
it seems like it's going to be an issue in the future. I have a feeling that might be an issue.
Yeah. But the Peruvians,
I have
knowing
nothing
that,
I
have
can say
let
on
him
that.
go.
You'll have to wait.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Cool. What else? I think we've sort of covered everything. He's on his way back to Etenmere. I like Arathon in a rage. He's like, I'm gonna go back to Etenmere and tell the shamans what's what. Then I'm going to, if the Koreani try anything, I'm gonna give them a piece of my mind.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I mean, I'm looking forward to his return to the continent because I just want to know what the heck he's going to be up to next. Where does it go from here as far as what Arathon does? Yeah, that's going to be something to look forward to.
Yep.
The very end of chapter 10, before the news items, Sethvir says that these witless sisters, appointed to scour the Koreani library, would disclose the forgotten annals of an event far more wisely left to obscurity. And I'm like, what is best left obscure? What is he worried about that these people are going to dig up now?
Is it the necromancy stuff that the Koreani do? Or yeah, actually.
Well, think about this. Moriel knew a certain name,
What name?
right? Because she threw that name in Sethvir's face, not realizing who she was talking to. But the Koreani's existence predates, goes all the way back to the time of, when the Callum Kincaid and his, seven, his group of seven researchers did their whole thing. So presumably you could infer from there that somewhere in the Koreani they may know who Callum Kincaid is or what he looks like.
Okay, all right.
Got it. And is this also what they are referring to when they are talking to each other about, oh, and good thing she doesn't know about our part in the history of the knife? I think Satvir says that he left out information about their part in the history of the knife when telling Ilera some things.
I think so because Innocent Tour used it, at I believe Asandir's direction to sever her ties to the Koreani order.
Okay.
Got it.
Cool. And then, and then at the last news item, we get a little hint that Arathon has decided to close his feud with the shamans. That was the last thing he decided. So
that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Yeah, some of those are some exciting chapters, I gotta say. It was kind of odd because it was like chapter 8 was so like big, like action and a lot of big events happening, and then chapters 9 and 10 were like a lot of information, so it was kind of a shift, in your reading speed. So it took me longer to get through 9 and 10, even though they were just as interesting. But 8 was like so fast. I read 8 through 8 so fast because I was just like, oh, what's gonna happen next? He's in the crystal. And then 9 and 10 was like, oh, okay, there's a lot of history here, and I had to slow down and take it all in. So it was definitely interesting going through those. So we got 3 chapters left.
Yes. I feel like it hasn't really sunk in for me that this is the second last book in the series. I'm still in the mode of there's a middle book in the series. There's a lot
Yeah,
more to go.
right.
It feels like there has to be a lot more to go. I mean, a good thing the next book is pretty big, but I cannot
Yeah.
believe we're nearing the end.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because there is a lot more to go,
Hmm.
but yet then you go, oh wait, there's only one more book left.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's not. But it's not just a book; it's a big book,
Uh,
and it's a whole arc
also,
by itself. It's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Also,
Like
this one we didn't mention, but Arathan met Paravian again for the second time.
the one from Selkwood who sends him off on the boat.
Yeah, when he meets her in the Sun
oh
Child,
yeah, the Sun Child. Yes,
sung
yes,
his
that's right.
redemption from the curse.
Yep.
Wait, so the Sunchild was able to travel from here to there?
Yeah.
Or was it a projection?
I think she was there because he mentioned, um, he thought she was in breathing flesh at the time. Um,
Yeah, she mentioned something about not allowing him to die after removing. She basically helped him remove the curse from himself and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, and she mentioned, "Why would I hurt you now?" Like that kind of thing.
yeah, she's like, I've not come to ease your passage across the veil. I didn't sing your deliverance from that curse just to see you abandon life.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so Demir Shamans.
What else? I think
Oh,
we've
yeah.
covered it.
Sethvir and Asandir, when they were talking about how Sethvir, Asandir's annoyed, and Sethvir's just, gave his annoyance the wary stare of a discomposed cat, you know, unable to measure because he couldn't figure out, how this was going to affect things because, uh, he had gaps in his earth sense from, that had been put there deliberately.
Yeah, he was able to see briefly with the connection to Alethea through that ward. But
Yeah.
cool.
Yep.
Any
Very
other
cool
thoughts?
stuff.
Anything else that we should be talking about?
No, I think we got it. Black Dawn, Exigencies, and Expedient. The next 3 chapters.
Nice. I got a lot of cooking to do today and some working out maybe, so I will be continuing on right away with the audiobook.
Jumping right in. All right.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for listening if you're still here, and we will see you next week with the final 3 chapters of this. Oh, sorry, in 2 weeks. Sorry. So used to saying next week for the other discussions, but in 2 weeks with the final 3 chapters of Destiny's Conflict. And see, that's my problem. I'm still on Initiate's trial in my head, but the last 3 chapters of Destiny's Conflict, and then we'll be on to Song of the Mysteries from there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.